Kevin Gordon here from Autosavant.com with your March 2nd edition of the Afternoon Commute. A random smattering of wonderful little things to go through today. Should probably be a quick one. Starting with the Passport IQ that I carry around on the dashboard of the long-term test Ford EcoBoost F-150. You may notice something. When I drive in the long-term F-150, I don't constantly get false alarms from the radar detector and constantly look for the mute button to kill them. Reason for that? It's got GPS and it knows where all of the things that I've already marked off as false alarms are, so they're not there. I still owe everybody out there a full review of the IQ. The reason that hasn't happened yet is because I'm waiting to do the software update. The reason that hasn't happened yet is because I'm lazy. So what do we have for the afternoon commute today on this slightly gloomy Friday in the Philadelphia metro area? I want to start off by talking about NASCAR. And no, not the absolute terrible Daytona 500 and all of its delays and the fact that really nobody cared at the end of it. Now I want to talk about NASCAR Teams today, specifically Penske Racing. I have a special place in my heart for Penske Racing because I had an uncle who was an Indy mechanic and he worked for Penske back in the Marlboro sponsored days. So Penske Racing is the only current full-time major team that runs on what hardware? It runs on Dodge. Well, next year they're switching over and they're going to be running on Fords. So that'll be the last major team that was running on Dodges. It should be interesting to see what happens to Dodge in NASCAR next year. Why did they switch? Roger Penske, when speaking to the press, was pretty darn direct about it, and he said, because we want to win a championship, and being the only team that runs Dodges, it's not so much they didn't support him, it's the fact that you just don't get that community of people working out on engine manufacturing the way you do for Ford, Chevy, and let's face it right now, Toyota. Well, moving on to some local news for the Philadelphia area. Yesterday, at about 11 o'clock, since I didn't get a chance to do an afternoon commute yesterday, I didn't get to report on this, a man driving a Jeep Grand Cherokee drove through a fence and all over the runways at the Philadelphia airport. Air traffic control picked it up on radar and diverted some flights. One of them was within 10 minutes of landing on one of the runways he was out driving around on. If you read the news article, the guy was, of course, some form of high. He was charged with, they threw the whole book at him. They gave him, reckless endangerment, avoiding arrest. It's just, on and on and on and on and on. They say the reason he did this is because he was high. I have a different theory. My theory is that he'd been driving around and getting deplorable gas mileage in his Jeep Grand Cherokee for so long, he finally wanted to take it off-road. If you do some Googling, because I've been doing it recently, about places to take four-wheel drives off-road in the southeastern region of Pennsylvania, there's almost nowhere. But strangely, there is a trail by the Philadelphia airport. Where the specifics of it are, I won't tell you because people get about as mad about giving away locations to off-road as they do about burning spots if you fish. So maybe that's what he was looking for, and he was just a little confused and decided to go tooling around the airport. Saturday's been watching a lot of Top Gear, and he wanted to see how well he did as a star in a reasonably priced car around the track. And I've now probably spent 2 minutes pounding this into the ground. Number 3 for today, and I probably should have started this segment with my finger on my chin for all you continuity experts out there last year. Jalopnik reported yesterday that Apple, the computer manufacturer, is hiring automotive engineers to come work for them. And it doesn't take an enormous leap from there to guess that they're getting into the automotive, infotainment area. That would actually make an enormous amount of sense. Apple is getting to a place where they own as much of the market as they're going to in their two biggest things, iPhones and iPads. Yeah, they may grow 1% or 2%, but it's not going to be a large growth market for them anymore. Their computers are going to continue to do well with, and there's of course rumors that they're going to get into TVs, beyond just the little boxes that are Apple TVs, and potentially actually start marketing Apple branded televisions with all their stuff baked directly into them. So it should be something interesting to watch, and something that I'm interested in covering here in the future is the different handset and phone manufacturers getting into building some software to install directly into the cars. Although I still stand by the fact that the way to do this is to allow for dumb screens and smartphones and an interface to connect the two of them together, which there's a manufacturer doing, and I'll try to work to bring that to the site here in the near future. Number 4 for the day, Audi released some pictures of its upcoming race car that it will be running in Le Mans in the LMP, I don't know what the number it is, 2, 1, the top ranks of the endurance racing series. It is the R18 E-Tron Quattro. So R18, it's another one of their big, flat pan, diesel-powered endurance racing cars. E-Tron, it's going to have something electronic about it, and it's Quattro. Well, here's the interesting part about the car, and the thing that's going to differentiate it from the field. It's going to have, much like Formula One cars do today, a regenerative braking energy capture system. And the way it's actually going to do that is attached to the front wheels instead of the rear wheels and the engine, the way Formula One is going to be a, some sort of motor that spins in the front wheels that during braking can sense to generate electricity. And it's going to store that energy in a flywheel, much like Porsche has in one of their hybrid race cars. It's not a direct mechanical connection from the wheels to the flywheel, but the energy that's going to be given back will be stored in a flywheel instead of batteries. When that energy wants to be redelivered, it's going to be delivered through the energy capture engine motor that is sitting in between the front wheels, making it effectively all-wheel drive while using that drive system. So it's an interesting system. For Le Mans, they're supposed to be going out with 4 cars. 2 of them are going to be these E-Tron Quattros, and 2 of them are going to be cars without the system at all, but they're putting their winning race team in the cars with the E-Tron Quattro system. So pretty interesting. While speaking about endurance car racing, I had another question for you out there. Moving over to a fully electronic race series, why wouldn't they come out with some kind of hot swappable battery technology where you come into the pits, you literally slide out an entire battery unit, you shove another one in and send them back out? I bet you they could do it, in Formula One, they could probably do it as fast as they can refuel. Oh, they don't refuel in Formula One anymore. Still, I don't think it would take all that long, and that would make for an interesting series. Final point about racing, and this is another one of those things I think about while sitting in the dark, is why don't they just remove all the restrictions from Formula One, but limit how much fuel they give them for the race? If they really want to drive technology in Formula One, it seems to me like the best way to come up with efficiency would be to say, we're going to absolutely get rid of all restrictions. None. No wing restrictions, no tire restrictions, nothing. But the amount of fuel you're going to get is going to be X amount. And if the cars are too fast, start giving them less. And you could even have it so that it starts to go down through the season. That would make for some really interesting racing. It would make for a lot of interesting strategy, and it could make it so that qualifying times, because you could give them extra fuel for qualifying, could be outrageously fast during a time when there's a slightly safer environment, you know, than a race. All right, and that'll be all the soapbox issues for today. So the final thing for this Friday, and it's not a soapbox issue, it's end the day with a smile. Ford has released pictures of the 2013 Super Duty under a black piece of cloth. It looks a lot like the current Super Duty. And they're calling it an all-new 2013 Super Duty, which is kind of interesting because I didn't actually realize it was scheduled for all new yet. You have to wonder if this is Ford responding to the fact that during the pickuptrucks.com comparison test, the Silverado just spanked the Super Duty Ford. I mean, embarrassed it for a truck that isn't rated with as much horsepower and torque. It beat the snot out of it going up the hill, and then between its engine and transmission setup, it did much better on the descent as well. So stay tuned for that. I think that's supposed to be released next week. We'll get the official pictures of that at the Professional Bull Riders Association event that's happening. That's all I had. Kevin Gordon from Auto Savant, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week.